So, welcome to the last session of the day, the closing session, as it were. And we're going to talk about building a healthcare blockchain. But first, I'm going to tell you a little bit about me. I'm Dr. Everardo Barojas. I actually just finished my PhD a couple of months ago. So I'm the founder of Prescripto. And Prescripto is a company that was founded in 2016 with the very explicit mission of bringing e-prescriptions to Mexico and Latam. But actually, my connection to the crypto space comes from further back. Back in 2013, I was part of an early hire of the first Bitcoin exchange in Mexico. Those were very, very early days, and it was very exciting. I'm also an academic, and as an academic, I created a methodology to evaluate the structure of smart contracts called RISC. And you can read all about it in ri5c.com. You can see the address there on my screen. And now on to the main matter. Back when we started Prescripto, you have to realize that there was no earlier solution to create e-prescriptions in Mexico. So back when we started the company, we realized that there were three problems that we have to solve. And they were not particularly easy, but at least they were clear. The first one had to do with adoption. We had to get doctors to use our platform. The second one had to do with getting pharmacies to actually fulfill the prescriptions that we created. And the third one was created by these first two. And it was that these stakeholders that are far apart, the doctor, the patient, and the pharmacy actually have to share data between them. And the data that they share is the prescription, right? And there was no infrastructure to share this data. This is the problem that we decided to solve with RexChain. RexChain is a health-specific blockchain. The name derives from RX chain, RX being the designation for prescription. And we added an E in between because it was easier to read, and we wanted the logo to be a T-Rex. It is basically a network, like most blockchains. And in essence, the data that's stored there is prescription data. So it's a prescription ledger. It's very simple. Now, the three guiding principles of this software are that it's distributed with an open source license, and having RexChain exist as free and open source software has been instrumental in getting this to market. One of the main points, and it's not really evident, is that it removes the argument on intellectual property when you're actually trying to do business with a massive corporation. And this has helped us a lot in dealing with, let's say, companies like UNICEF or a big pharma laboratory. Also provides some trust, and it's not necessarily the same as the trust that we envision software or financial crypto software. And here, it's more to do with just having the code being public so that you can audit it. And the third one that was kind of unexpected is culture. And most of the developers that we've collaborated with love free and open source software. And all of the internet is built on open source software. So having our team collaborate on an open source project of our own has been very rewarding, and developers loved it. It also pushes us to practice to use the best practices out there, because when you have your code open to the public, vulnerabilities are very easily exposed and very quickly exposed. Second guiding principle is that we used proof of work. And we really didn't want to reinvent the wheel here. Proof of work is the most studied consensus mechanism, and we tried to base our system on the way the Bitcoin blockchain was structured, basically a UTXO model. But instead of having encrypted inputs and outputs that represent basically numbers, we have a data payload that can store a limited amount of data. The third guiding principle was that this was a school. We developed this from scratch in 2016. At this point, Ethereum was less than 2 years old. It was roughly 1.5. And this was something unexpected. We didn't plan for this to happen, but it would have been extremely hard to train a group of developers on blockchain technology at this point in time without building our own software. This was kind of a byproduct, but it was great. Now, so what? Why is this important? We've already spoken about Prescripto and RexChain. And this is important because prescriptions in Mexico and most of Latam look like this. They're pieces of paper with really bad handwriting all over them. And the patient acts as this messenger between the doctor and the pharmacy. He doesn't even get to keep the prescription. He just takes it to the pharmacy. This is obviously, there's some security concerns around this. It's extremely easy to forge paper-based prescriptions. You can actually find YouTube tutorials of how to forge a prescription in Mexico. You can go look that up right now, and you'll have some fun reading the comments. But it's not just that. In the pharma space, getting structured clinical data is extremely hard. There are very few systems that provide actual usable structured data. And we're always going on about machine learning and stuff like that, but it's useless if we don't have enough data to use. There's also the fact that, I'm not sure if you're aware, but developing a new drug costs somewhere between 11 and 14 billion US dollars. And it takes years to do so. And one of the main things that's very different from the tech world to the health world is that in the pharma world, there's actually something called Irum's law. And it's Moore's law spelled backwards, because every year it gets twice as hard to develop a new drug. And one of the things that have proven to be game changers is actually structured clinical data that has information on what different patients were prescribed and how they developed, can actually help us develop new drugs and new treatments. So one of the things that we've worked hard on is UX. And this is actually, it reminds me of the way that the crypto and blockchain space was when I first started working in it in 2013, where you had players like Coinbase in its early days and Circle working on very, very simple interfaces, because they were optimizing to get as many people using their software as possible. I would say that most enterprise blockchains, but we don't really have users that are very tech savvy. But what we do get is people that want very, very simple software. And in essence, what they get with Prescripto is an integrated wallet into a web client. And I recently found this screenshot. This wireframe that you can see on the left was the first wireframe that I made for Prescripto. It was called Prescriptum back then. 2015. You can see that it was more or less based on a Gmail template. Now it's a much richer software that has a bunch of interactions with medication catalogs and a lot of really cool stuff that doctors use. Now let's talk about the important part, like the impact, the actual impact of it, because actually this talk is part of the blockchain for social good track from Truffle. And we can see that on this side, we've really had some progress in 2020. What we're seeing here is new doctors per month. We've basically 10x'd, roughly 10x'd since February, March 2020. This is a screenshot of doctors using our platform. This is how it looks like. And it's not just doctors either. There's also interactions with patients. When a doctor creates a prescription with our platform, he emails it to the patient. And the patient can then follow some very simple instructions to fulfill his or her prescription on an online pharmacy. This interaction, of which we're now seeing thousands per month, was not even possible before March 2020. Before that, we had, even using Prescripto, we had only one pharmacy that would take our prescriptions, and they were very limited in their stock because they had a very particular business model focused on chronic diseases. Now, after March, we did a lot of work onboarding online pharmacies, and this is the result. We're now getting patients and doctors to use and to experience a fully digital prescription cycle. And yeah, it's basically 10x, but a better way to phrase this actually is that during the past 6 months, we've seen more growth than in the first 4 years of our existence. And I guess I was listening to the earlier talk from Sid from Statwig, and this is just being in the right place at the right time. This is the part of entrepreneurship that's just luck. Now, to end the last session of TruffleCon, I want to end with this too long didn't read of 3 things that you should take away from this session. And the first one is that in many, many ways, blockchain is the evolution of free and open source software. And FOSS open source creates good culture and inspires the best practices. The second one, and this is actually something that I think is very contrarian, is that there is a great fit between health data and blockchain. The third one and last one is that everyone's always going on about the DeFi and the financial side of cryptocurrency, and it's not just DeFi. I would wager that the current state of blockchain is very much like GeoCities was in the late 90s. And if you're familiar with, or if you're not familiar with GeoCities, you're probably younger than me, but GeoCities was one of the first content management systems for the web. And what's important about it is that at that point, we didn't really know how to use the internet. We didn't really know how to behave on the internet, and we didn't really know what the internet would be useful for. And GeoCities was just a good example of how much it could grow. But this is very much the way that I feel about the blockchain ecosystem right now. We're experimenting with a technology that has, we're playing with it, experimenting to see what kinds of problems it can solve. But the killer app is not clear to us at this point. The killer use case is still unknown to us. And that's it. I think I finished with 10 minutes to spare for questions. So I'll just stay here, and if you have any question, just type it in the screen, and I'll do my best to answer it. Okay, so Liz, what type of compliance challenges have you faced? We, for the first, I think 2 or 3 years, we have to work with the Mexican FDA for them to actually understand what we were doing. And there was a lot of documenting. We had to write a bunch of stuff on what we were doing, how we validated the doctor was actually a doctor, how we were securing the data, which was actually very easy because we were using blockchain tech and everything's encrypted and signed with a private key, so it's very easy to check for consistency. And the last thing and the most important thing for any prescription system, and the part that we really have to prove to them, was that a prescription could not be fulfilled twice. And this is a really cool similarity between the financial system and prescriptions. We have the same double spend problem. And now Anne Wilmot asks, how hard was it to get adoption from the medical system? That seems like a barrier. It was a barrier. And it took us 4 years to understand how to actually do it. And if you look at our conversion figures, like how many doctors would actually prescribe, for the first 2 or 3 years, and we were actually spending money on marketing at that point. But for that time, we had like a 5% conversion ratio, which, it was similar to some fintech platforms, so we weren't too concerned. But we figured out a way to keep doctors interested, and we're now up to like 30 to 50% conversion from each doctor that signs up to a doctor that creates a prescription in the first 10 days. So it was a very, very hard problem. And we have to lose a lot of money and a lot of sleep to solve it.